The blistering midday heat gave way to a refreshing coolness. Dark, heavy clouds rolled in from the west, blanketing the sky in shades of grey. A sense of expectation hung in the air as distant thunder murmured, hinting at the coming rain. The townsfolk, with mixed feelings of worry and excitement, cast quick glances at the brooding sky while rushing to complete their outdoor tasks. Rain was on the brink of pouring down. Amidst this, young Taylor continued her chores in the yard, seemingly oblivious to the brewing storm. "Taylor, why aren't you heading home?" yelled her neighbor, Stephen, an elderly gentleman. "Look at the sky. It's dark, and lightning's already flashing." Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder, accompanied by a bright flash of lightning, startled the old man, prompting him to hurry home at a brisk pace. Taylor, momentarily stunned, blinked rapidly before letting out a deep sigh and slowly making her way home. The first heavy raindrops began to fall, quickly turning into a downpour. Streams of water cascaded down Taylor's hair and face, masking the tears that mixed with the rain. With each step towards her house, her tears flowed more freely. Pausing briefly at the doorstep, she exhaled deeply and stepped inside. "There she is," remarked a thin woman with a slightly slurred voice, her mood seemingly buoyed by alcohol. She eyed Taylor critically. "Did you finish cleaning the yard?" the woman asked sharply. "Almost done," Taylor replied curtly, quickly cleaned herself up, and retreated to her room. She changed into dry clothes and snuggled under her blanket, feeling the warmth envelop her. Her eyes gradually closed, and she drifted into sleep, undisturbed by the storm outside. In her dream, Taylor was back in her childhood, in the beautiful house by the river, surrounded by her parents when she was about 5 years old. Her father playfully tossed her into the air, evoking laughter, while her mother playfully chided him, her face alight with a smile. In her mother's hands was a tray of sandwiches, and Lilo, their cherished white Spitz, playfully darted around their feet. The dream shifted, and they were all in the car, Lilo included, driving through a blur of trees and fields. The wind caressed Taylor's face, bringing a smile to her lips. But then, abruptly, everything halted, and a voice pierced the calm. "Get the girl. She's still breathing." Taylor sat up in her bed, her heart pounding from the vividness of the dream, or perhaps from the thunder that continued to rage outside. It had been a decade since the tragic car accident that claimed the lives of her parents and Lilo, their beloved pet. Taylor, miraculously surviving after being thrown from the car, had become an orphan in an instant. Her parents had been prosperous, and initially, Taylor was taken in by guardians who seemed loving and caring. However, just a month after her parents' funeral, a shocking revelation came to light. All the money from her father's business accounts had mysteriously vanished. With the family assets seized by banks due to unpaid debts, Taylor's life took a drastic turn. From being a cherished daughter, she found herself in a simple orphanage, alone and confused. That was until Aunt Stella and Uncle Virgil appeared, proclaiming themselves her new family. As a 7-year-old, Taylor yearned for affection and care. But this new home offered neither. Her aunt and uncle's kindness was a facade, maintained only for the benefits they received for taking in an orphan. In this household, Taylor was reminded often to be thankful, despite receiving only harsh words and cold treatment. Whenever child welfare inspectors visited, her life would temporarily transform. She would be dressed in fine clothes, borrowed from her cousin Georgia, and showcased as a happy child in a loving family. Taylor was coerced into playing this part perfectly, as Aunt Stella threatened to send her back to the orphanage if she spoke out of turn. The reality was far from the image portrayed. Taylor lived in a cramped room, wore second-hand clothes, and endured bullying from Georgia, her cousin. As she grew older, her guardians increasingly burdened her with chores, expecting her to clean the house and help in the barn from a young age. Taylor's situation was a stark contrast to her earlier life, filled with love and joy. Her heart ached for the warmth and happiness of her past, now just a distant, unattainable memory. Despite the hardships, she clung to the small mercies in her life, fearing that speaking up might land her back in the harsher environment of the orphanage. Her tears, often shed in solitude, were the silent witnesses to her pain and resilience. A year had passed since Georgia left for her studies, and Taylor had hoped things at home would improve. She longed for her guardians to notice her more, maybe even to love her. But reality was harsh. Her guardians started drinking heavily, often going on long bingers. To escape this, Taylor would leave the house like she did today. "Why are you lying there, you nui sansa?" Aunt Stella looked into the room. "Go to the store," she demanded loudly. "But Aunt Stella, it's pouring outside," Taylor protested. "You won't melt in a bit of rain," Stella replied sharply, her stern gaze telling Taylor not to argue. In the past, her guardians had been physically harsh with her. Despite this, Taylor feared that a children's home might be even worse, so she always followed their orders. Even now, with the rain pouring and thunder rumbling, she headed to the nearest store. Then, something unexpected happened. Stella's younger brother, Walter, who had just gotten out of prison, arrived. He immediately noticed Taylor, now 16 and strikingly pretty with her big blue eyes, light wavy hair, and slim figure. One night, while Stella and Virgil were out cold from drinking, Walter crept into Taylor's room. She was reading a book when he silently closed the door and moved towards her. Taylor felt a mix of fear and disgust as his rough, tattooed fingers touched her shoulder. She screamed and fought back, managing to flee the room. Walter, angry, pursued her. In the kitchen, a barely coherent Stella only smiled vacantly. Virgil was passed out at the table. "Aunt Stella, please help!" Taylor pleaded in terror. Stella only responded with a hiccup and a dismissive wave. Taylor dashed out of the house, Walter close behind. Tripping at the gate, she fell to the ground, with the menacing figure of Walter towering over her. In that moment of dread, Taylor closed her eyes tightly. "Hey, stop! Don't touch her!" Taylor was startled by a voice she didn't recognize. A young man, out of breath, stood nearby, looking determined. Walter smirked with contempt. "Yeah? And what'll you do about it?" he sneered. The young man turned to Taylor. "Is he your dad?" "No," Taylor burst out. "I don't have parents. I'm living with guardians, and he's their relative. They're all drunk now." Suddenly, Walter lunged at the young man, who swiftly sidestepped and tripped him, sending him tumbling onto the grass. The young man quickly pinned Walter down. "Had enough yet?" Walter didn't respond, so the young man pressed his knee harder until Walter yelped, "Stop! It hurts!" As the young man let him up, Walter limped away, clutching his back. The young man introduced himself as Evan, then quickly turned his attention to Taylor. "You've got a nasty cut there. Do you have a first aid kit at home?" "I'm not going back," Taylor said firmly. "I'd rather sleep outside than return there." Evan agreed, especially wary of someone peering at them through a window. He suggested they go to his grandmother's house. "I'm staying with my grandma for the weekend," he explained. "I'll be here a few more days. Why do they treat you like that?" Taylor's voice was bitter. "I don't know, but I'm not going back. I'd rather be in a children's home than live like this." Tears welled up in her eyes. Evan comforted her, reassuring her with a gentle pat on the shoulder. "Don't worry. Everything will be okay." Taylor had been taken in by Stella for the financial support. Stella used Taylor's funds for her own daughter, Georgia, and continued to